Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson, also known as Two Brother Bill from the Last Nighters. We are the Last Nighters. You can find us at lastnighters.com/156 for this episode on Contact with our buddy Snobby Bobby. Contact is a bit of a think piece of a movie that straddles the line between science and faith, and it bridges that gap and divide and brings some interesting questions to the fore. We're going to have a pretty good discussion that certainly calls into question what is peddled as science these days, as it seems to be a far cry from what was presented in this gem from 1997. Snobby Bobby, welcome back to the show. I want to welcome you as not only a friend, but also a Patreon supporter of us. And people can join the ranks of the Patreon support at lastnighters.com/Patreon. Welcome back to the show, Snobby Bobby. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm feeling better. I got all that shit off my chest, so I'm feeling all right.
Great. Yeah, I was gonna say, Robert, Daniel trivialized your situation as a first world problem, but I'd say that that's a relatively severe one.
I mean, not heating,
right? I mean, hot water in the winter and like heat in general in the wintertime. That's,
I think even some third world countries have heat in the wintertime, I think.
Yeah, that's not a first world
problem,
Daniel.
We've talked about this many times in the past. The modern conveniences we have at our leisure, not even kings 100 years ago, 200 years ago had. And one of those is delivery of propane in a timely manner for a 120-gallon tank. So, and Jodie Foster movies. Yeah, they didn't even exist back then. So anyway,
how did they get by?
Snobby, you've been on the show a couple times in the past. You also are host/co-host of the Not For Everyone podcast, of which I am a listener and Patreon supporter as well. We're going to have your prior appearances on with us from Demolition Man most recently, and The Patriot from way back in July. We did that for Independence Day. Despite being locked down, we celebrated our independence together here on this show. So thank you for being willing to come back yet again, despite all the negative grievances that may have occurred from previous appearances.
No, that's all in your head, in Robert's head. Everything's fine.
Everything's good.
I just want to do. I want to set a precedent now. I only want to do like movies from the 90s that you would watch like with your family on this show.
This fits the bill.
So not Demolition Man.
That will be my brand on the Last Nighters /Actual.
We like to typecast people here, so yes, that's excellent.
Pluto Nash is coming up. The Adventures.
Right. I thought you were going to throw Norbit in there, but we've got that one already lined up.
Oh, damn.
Are you excited about Coming to America?
You know, Norbit is Brian Wilson's favorite movie from the Beach Boys.
Is Brian Wilson still alive?
Yeah, I saw him a few years ago. I don't know if he still is. I saw him a few years ago, though. It was very sad. It was like they were just kind of like rushing cattle out to like perform, do a dance, and then they just kind of brought him back off stage. Anyway, Jodie Foster, treasure.
And Norbit. So what do you do on the Not For Everyone podcast? If you had to do the 30-second elevator pitch to get people to go check it out, what would you say?
I hate to use the same description as I always use, but essentially it's two cynical man children releasing our repressed juvenile humor and anger yet love for each other, and exploring our friendship through the lens of obscure cult and horror film. It's not remotely as highbrow as what you guys have going on. It's quite the opposite in that sense. And we try to keep it a bit of an escape from the woes of the world, even though we will poke fun at it from time to time. So, it's just two dudes talking smack to each other and then talking about a specific movie from the past.
That's a pretty good description, and I do enjoy it, even though you guys spend about half the episode just ribbing each other before you even get to the movie.
But then we still rib each other when we get to the movie.
Yeah, and that's half the fun. So I'm a big fan, and like I said, a supporter, and I love having you on.
You know, if we
Our
both
show.
canceled our Patreons for each other's podcasts, we could just, when you write checks for Christmas, like here's $100, and then you give me $100. It's like, why did we even waste the paper and the ink here?
You know, it's even worse in our situation because not only am I paying tax to the government on what you're paying me, but vice versa. So the government's getting 2 cuts.
But I want that bonus content from Actual Anarchy. So
Well,
sorry.
What we do.
Well, wait a
We
minute.
give you-
So Daniel, did you get a drawing?
I
Is
did.
that what they sent me? Okay.
Yeah. Well, if you sign up for the Patreon, not to put the cart before the horse for any new listeners out there, but my co-host, by the way, I'm the host and he's the co-host. He will draw a picture of you, Daniel. There's a picture of Daniel on the Patreon. It's a little Anarchy A with a face on it.
So he didn't actually look at a picture of Daniel and attempt to draw. Okay.
No.
It's like you gave him what is that? Pictionary? You gave him like a Pictionary term, like draw this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to guess that it was me because there was another person there.
Right. Another Patreon supporter. We try to
what
do
do
them out
you do
in
for
ways.
people that don't have such obvious
Guessed?
pictographic sensibilities?
We guess we're friends with a lot of people on our Instagram at Not For Everyone Podcast. So a lot of those people we interact with anyway, and we kind of know what they look like. But I mean, there's a guy named Charlie, and he just drew a picture of Charlie Brown. Basically, it's just stupid. It's a wonderful perk of the Patreon. But before, I'm not asking anyone for Patreon support quite yet. Just go listen to Not For Everyone Podcast if you like movies and offensive dudes talking smack.
Right. And they're here for that already. But I also want to give you a thank you for the very, what's the right term for this? Your promotion of our show at the beginning of one of your shows is so like just straight delivery. I'm not sure if it's intentional or it's like, it's really good. It's very professional.
Yeah. I agree.
But it's not enthusiastic. So it's like it leaves the listener wondering, do I
Well,
really
I mean, I'm not gonna be someone I'm not. I'm Snobby Bobby. I can't be like stoked about things. It's not
right.
It's not my brand.
Okay, well,
we can do it. You can send me a copy, and I'm gonna make a special one for you guys.
You already did.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna keep doing it.
You've done too much.
As long as that fat Patreon money keeps coming in.
All right.
I'm gonna plug you guys so good.
Just the way we like it.
Plug us good and hard. All right. Well, let's plug this movie here, the Jodie Foster classic from 1997. Starting off with the Google description. It's a PG film, sci-fi, 2 hours and 30 minutes. 7.4 on IMDb, 66% Rotten Tomatoes, 62% Metacritic, and 85% of Google users like it. In this Zemeckis-directed adaptation of the Carl Sagan novel, Dr. Ellie Arroway, played by Jodie Foster, races to interpret a possible message originating from the Vega star system. Once first contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence is proven, Arroway contends with restrictive National Security Advisor Kitts, played by James Woods, and religious fanatics bent on containing the implications of such an event. An incredible message is found hidden in the signal, but will Arroway be the one to answer its call? Release date of July 11, 1997. Director Robert Zemeckis. Story by Carl Sagan, starring Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey, William Fichtner, Tom Skerritt, among others. Lots of stuff going on in this one. It's a pretty interesting film. I haven't seen it in quite a while, but it still holds up, I think. So, Robert, let's go to you for your opening, please.
Yeah, this movie, and I remember it being trashed for its length and just its general boringness, I guess you could say, back in the day. But man, on rewatch, it was perfectly fine from what I saw. But I thought this movie kind of encapsulated it was almost like the perfect movie at my time for me. I don't know if that's the case for a lot of people, but like when YouTube just started getting going in like 2007 to 2010, 12, there were a lot of content creators that kind of debunked Christianity and like arguments for God and that sort of thing. It was like this atheism movement. And they were, I don't know if, I'm sure people are aware of this, or they were mostly watching YouTube for like cat videos. I don't know. But in the 90s, like that was like a big part of like my development was, do you believe in God or not? Are you an atheist? Are you agnostic? And this movie, it's really heavy-handed, and it's a little bit, I think it gets a few things wrong, but at least it does kind of address this thing. And I mean, nowadays it's like really quaint. I know even today there's still, I mean, now it's because back then it was the Christian conservatives who were trying to get into people's bedrooms, and the young progressive me, if you want to call me that, was saying, hey, fuck off, get out of my bedroom. Get out of here. I don't, whatever. But now it's the ultra liberal progressive left that's trying to clamp down and control everything. And it's the like Christian conservatives that are just like, okay, now we have to think transgenders are thing and like have bathrooms and sterilize children. And I mean, they're the ones that are on the defensive, right? And it's just this movie just feels like so quaint. Like I don't know what else to say. The ending is atrocious, and I definitely want to get into that. And there are the depictions of the religious folks in this movie range from reasonable to hilarious. But I don't know if this is like a normal thing for people as they get older, they get more sympathetic to religion. But I am definitely more sympathetic to the religious people in this movie than I used to be. So I don't know. I don't know where you guys want to take it from this, but I don't have a big poetic opening this time. It's been fairly haphazard, but there's a lot of stuff in here that I do want to get into.
All right. Yeah, that's good. I think that is going to set us up pretty well. I think a lot of people, when they saw this movie, they saw this as like this struggle between science and faith, science and religion, because that has been something that has been for a long time considered like you either believe in one or the other. And this is sort of like presenting that as, well, you can kind of do a little bit of both here. Now, it's a little bit ham-fisted, but I think overall it's fairly well done. I think that the fact that they bring up the questions at all makes it a bit of a more of a philosophical take, or at least bringing up questions. And of course, that now is damn near illegal to question things. You question the narrative these days and you'll be deplatformed or considered to be Hitler, who makes a cameo in this one as himself. As I was watching on Amazon, you can pause it and it shows you the cast of characters and said, hey, Hitler as himself. So I thought that was pretty funny. Send a picture of that to Snobby Bobby, who I will go to now for your take on what Robert said and your opening on this here movie.
Well, first of all, what Robert just said is essentially word for word my final thoughts on this movie. So there's that. Opening thoughts. This movie is very vanilla, but not that there's anything wrong with that. It's definitely an everybody movie that's trying to provoke thoughts, science versus religion, humanity, ingenuity of humanity, collectivism, whatever. Scientific paradigms, all that stuff. So it's attempting to do thought-provoking stuff beyond the typical 90s sci-fi, and 90s sci-fi was very into like the global initiative to do XYZ. So you have like Armageddon or Independence Day, or even like more tongue-in-cheek stuff like Men in Black. Just the institutions, the institutional realities and the things we subscribe to employ to address these certain questions in regards to human ingenuity and exploration and science or whatever. And Robert Zemeckis is such a like perfect director for something like this, because he's his early work I'm a huge fan of. So it's like Back to the Future, Romancing the Stone, Used Cars with everyone's favorite libertarian Hollywood actor Kurt Russell, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and then he directed Forrest Gump in the 90s, so he was kind of a hot ticket at the time. And suffice to say, I was a bigger fan of his stuff in the 80s because it's more fun and just whatever. On one hand, this movie can be enjoyed by kind of the casual moviegoer popcorn crowd, and get out of it on a surface level, like, oh, that's the Jodie Foster movie where she meets the alien that looks like a father. It's a pretty good one, like that kind of thing. Though the response to this, if I remember correctly, wasn't as positive from that particular crowd of the audience. But on the other hand, it offers enough little breadcrumbs for your like science, sci-fi, philosophy geeks to like draw more out of it if they wanted to. So everyone from folks like us having this conversation right now to the like, I fucking love science people. You know what I'm talking about?
They're annoying.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye for president people.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite ilk of progressives. So yeah, in the 90s, I feel like was just like kind of what Robert was alluding to. It was a lot more innocent time, and it's very digestible, but in a comfortable way, and it has what you get whatever you want to take out of it, and it kind of almost brilliantly does that in a sense. So it's like either A, kick back and watch this movie that makes you think a little bit, fun sci-fi, pretty genuine characters, authentic moments, and then if you want to draw more from it, you can.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, and I like your description of it being rather vanilla, and that's sort of how I almost think of Zemeckis as a director. He's very like straightforward,
people pleaser,
and yeah, he's a people pleaser. He does good work. It's competent work, but it's not going to be like super daring.
Right.
But
it's also not vapid. It's not Roland Emmerich or Michael Bay level stuff.
Right.
So this movie kind of balances, like, it's not Kubrick in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it's also not Transformers. It's like somewhere in this comfortable, to its credit, for better or worse, it's somewhere like middle bitchin' right there,
Oh yeah, this is the movie that was built for widespread appeal. Bob Zemeckis is the director you hire when you want your movie to make money.
Do you know he lets you call him that, Bob Zemeckis?
They're tight.
It's Robert.
I will also say that I really enjoy that mirror scene where she's running to get the pills. It's pulled off really, really well. And I know it was a blue screen that she was running to, and so they like put the image on there, but it works brilliantly.
Yeah, there's a lot of very at risk of, again, repeating myself in the final thoughts that I have pre-written for this. There's a lot of very meticulous visuals and like aesthetic in this movie. Like you can tell Zemeckis or whoever his team was, like, were pro craftsmen and communicators. I was watching a video, so this isn't an original thought, but I thought it was interesting, where like particularly the scene where she's getting on the machine, the weird fidget spinner that they build. It's all very like daunting visuals. Like it's supposed to, the rotating hoops or whatever they are supposed to kind of like represent the Kraken, or and she's walking the plank, and the chair, when they're like, well, we got to put a chair in there for you because it's not safe to just follow the alien technology blueprints. That there's no lawyers on Vega. We got to put a chair in there, and then the chair malfunctions, and like the shots of the chair are like this weird kind of distorted, uncomfortable kind of representation of the human aspect of this cosmic machine. And ultimately that's the thing that almost destroys her, but thank God Matthew McConaughey gave her a compass,
Cracker Jack compass.
Yes. Sorry if I got ahead of myself there, but yeah.
that means so much to her. She keeps it the whole movie, puts it on a little chain, carries it around with her all the time. When some rando at some bar gives you a compass, that's what you do.
I mean, that's a
normal life.
microcosm of the type of movie you're dealing with here. Matthew McConaughey gave you a compass to wear. It's going to have some sort of significance later. Go, you know.
If I met McConaughey, and I think he's a cool dude, he's done some recent interviews. He seems like super down to earth and fairly open to honest inquiry and things like that. I would hang out with the dude, and if he gave me a compass, I sure as hell to hang on to that compass.
But what if it was what's his name? Something Palmer Joss, like that
Yeah,
name alone
Palmer Joss. Yeah,
make you not like the guy. Now he's supposed to be like he kind of represented the more spiritual side of the science versus or faith versus science kind of I guess,
but almost philosophical.
Yeah, was he supposed to be like a overtly Christian guy, or is he just like ambiguous spiritual science hippie guy?
Yeah, I got that. I got very much just hey, there's probably something out there. I can't tell you what it is. It's
right.
Not like,
but then they
the dogmatic approach.
He like helps out with like churches or something. I don't remember what it was, something like that. So
yeah, he's like presidential advisor to faith, whatever.
It kind of reeked of the ambiguity just to appeal to a larger audience. So it's not like super preachy, like one side of faith or other. And that's to its credit too, is like, it's not about a specific faith. It's like the conversation being had in this movie, there's themes, isn't about a specific faith per se. It's about having that conversation of faith in general versus science in general. So,
right. Faith versus evidence-based belief, one or the other.
Right, but then
and the movie tries to explain that these two can join scissor, like good friends.
Scissor me timbers.
And right, I don't know about you guys, but that end scene, it was hard to watch. I thought the ending in this movie was absolutely trash.
Yeah, which end are you talking about? Like the inquiry where she's testifying, or do you mean the scene behind me here at the beach?
No, the scene behind me at the beach, behind you at the beach, I did not have so much of a problem with. Although I think that was the layperson's problem with the movie, is that you built all this way up, and then it's just her dad, and he doesn't really even tell her anything. But for me, no, it was the stupid inquiry that was absolutely retarded. That she didn't say at any point, well, I believe in science, so how about we replicate the experiment and we send a second person and see if they have the same experience?
Because it's really expensive, Robert.
They spent $500 billion on this thing, and they're going to use it one time?
That's a good point. The damage had been done at that point.
I don't care. I don't care if it costs $100,000 every time you turn it on. You're gonna do it a second time.
So, this being a libertarian podcast, was the agenda and motivation behind the government institutions to save face and not allow that to proceed to a second experiment, because it would perhaps make the James Woods character and the lady that was the assistant to Bill Clinton or whatever, you know what I'm talking about? That lady,
Angela Bassett.
Yes, that's her name, Angela Bassett. I'm just thinking about the motivations of those characters are trying to suppress a second, and this is all obviously hypothetical, but like suppressing a second experiment would be potentially detrimental to the narrative that the government pushed, and on top of that, by the end of it, they knew that it probably was real because they had 18 minutes of static footage on that little GoPro camera or whatever, which conflicts with the overarching narrative.
Yeah. I didn't get that. I didn't really follow the desire to suppress. That didn't make any sense to me. If you were going to spend all this money on this scientific thing, and I mean, wouldn't you want to tout the successes? Wouldn't you want to celebrate every little last bit of evidence that you retrieved and talk about how smart and how successful and how amazing you and your accomplishments are. It sure seemed like a thing that a bureaucrat would want to take credit for and be like, yes, all this money was well spent and I should rise up in the ranks because of I was behind this project, and everybody should vote for me in the next election.
Yeah. I mean, you get the the speech bits from Bill Clinton in this. They're from an actual speech that he gave related to finding a meteorite in Antarctica. And it's funny because like the words he used work so well with this movie in particular, but he's doing the very thing you're saying, Robert. Like, oh, this, great technological advance that we've done. Our scientists are working hard and figuring out all this stuff, and we're so great and wonderful. You'd think that they would do that. That would be the narrative that they're trying to push, because
politicians, they take every opportunity to grandstand and to celebrate their supposed accomplishments. It's, even when they're not accomplishments.
Right.
This is actually something they accomplished.
Yeah, this story is a fairy tale.
Yeah, and it's also a little bit unfinished, like Robert's saying, like, well, the machine's there, so yeah, just go again. But they don't even go there.
And not even like, maybe I missed it, but what was even like, obviously you need the skeptic. And I thought James Woods' character was most interesting, but at the same time, like, what was his motivation behind trying to push the skepticism? Just to save face, or was there a larger agenda there? Like, that was all very like untied loose ends kind of situation, I think.
Yeah, if from my point of view, if there's an opportunity to actually speak with an alien race that has advanced technology beyond your wildest dreams, there would be 10,000 R&D deep state type in military industrial complex scientist nerds that are pulling at that guy's coat going, are you fucking kidding me? We need to learn all the things we can possibly from these people, anything at all, and turn this into everything and anything. It'd be a huge boon financially.
Or, just to speculate in the realm of fan fiction here and conspiracy theory.
We don't go there. We don't go there, Snobby.
I like how that's my first name. That's my favorite. I've known over. Oh, Snobby. Okay. So one of the things I texted Daniel when I was watching this, I was like, this movie's CIA as fuck. So like, it's all very like sugar-coated narratives of like, oh, this is really how things operate. Like, oh, the media's involved and they're just here to like report what's happening. And like, here's the various vague factions of government bureaucrats and where they stand on this. And here's the battalion of world scientists that are genuinely uncorruptible and interested in the pursuit of science. But if you want to speculate about James Woods's and your whole deep state thing rant you just went on there, like there is a certain sect of the alternative media that believes that the secret space program does already exist. The guy in Israel a couple weeks ago just came out and said, yeah, there's a galactic federation that the governments of the world are working with. Perhaps, just fan fiction speculate, James Woods was involved in concealing that. And if exploration in a second experiment, basically he's a disinformation agent to protect the deep state.
I could see, I don't know. That's one possible theory. I could also see one explanation for his character being that he wants to suppress any further discoveries from the public so that they can have like this invisible upper hand on the international community, because it was an international project, right? And you wouldn't necessarily want to share all the scientific discoveries. You might just say, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, we spent all this money. Sorry, guys, it doesn't work. P.S. It totally works, and we're totally going to score all this hot stuff.
That's probably the more rational,
Occam's razor.
Yes, which is a theme in this movie. Yeah, so they just didn't. It was all just secret technology monopoly in right.
Don't want to share with all the,
because they say that the technologists in general, that the technology that human, like the public knows about, is actually 40 years behind than what they actually have behind the scenes. So it's
yeah,
quite the leap.
that is what I hear.
Or
Yeah,
at least 40 years or something like that.
Didn't Jones say that there's all sorts of experiments happening with like going to different dimensions and different groups of people are doing this together and all reporting the same thing and seeing the same experiences? Was that the
that's the DMT stuff?
Yeah, the DMT travel. And then also he said he talked to, I think, Buzz Aldrin, who said there's a base on the moon, on the dark side of the moon. So who knows?
There's definitely footage of Buzz Aldrin out there that's talking about like a monoliths on Mars and stuff. Like that guy is super 33rd degree Freemason status. Like if there is a global like secret society conspiracy involved with NASA, like that guy's definitely part of it. But yeah, there is footage of Buzz Aldrin out there saying some pretty crazy I don't know if he's 33rd degree, but he's up there saying some pretty wild alien stuff.
Are monoliths still a thing? That was like all the rage a couple of weeks ago. They were popping up all over the place.
They are. I think we're at like 5 or 6 now. And some of the cuckoo birds that I follow online, who would normally be what you'd expect to be the type of people like, see, I told you so. Like, this is them trying to communicate. They're the ones like, nah, this is an art project. Like, don't even worry about it. Or it's like, this is disinformation stuff. This is distraction from the Great Reset or whatever. Like, so I don't know. It's that point of like, you're so, I always say, are you guys familiar with Project Bluebeam?
Yeah, that's where you're getting the public ready for the aliens so that you can control people.
I want to say it's in Behold the Pale Horse. I don't know if that's true, which is William Cooper's book, which is basically the godfather of modern conspiracy theory. And I'm so sorry we're going down this road right now, but I have to get this out there.
It's fine. It's
basically, Project Bluebeam is you're slowly acclimating the public to accept the possibility of aliens and an alien invasion. And I think there's some ties in with Project Mockingbird and like the CIA getting involved with Hollywood to help acclimate the public to this possibility. And then the big final hurrah, which some people have speculated is going to happen pretty soon, since they're ticking down the pandemic stuff and everything, and it's not particularly working, I guess. If it doesn't, I don't know. To implement the global government, they're going to unite in a mass hallucination of either an alien invasion / return of Christ kind of situation to get people rallied behind a global government.
Yeah, I've heard a fair amount about this. Basically, just what you've said, though. I don't have anything further. But whatever the sources are that are flying around in the conspiracy world, sounds like we're both getting the same transmission.
You're picking up the signals, and then it's a dodecahedron. So you got to lay out the 10,000 tablets to figure out the plans for the construction of the machine with the little human in it. I thought Bobby, that was actually muted, by the way. Who is?
Bobby is.
Yeah, Bobby knows. He knows.
No, he doesn't. Is he pretending? Maybe he's just pretending.
Sorry. Is it because I was muted?
That's all right. But I was going on a little mini thing where I really enjoyed the cryptography aspect of the message and how it was primes, so they knew that it was like this universal language, because primes would exist outside of human experience, of any other intelligence would be aware of that. And so it would be a method of communication. And Sagan put that in the book because that's kind of along his lines of thinking. He put that golden record on the Voyager space probe, and also something else that was put out to, if found by intelligent life, that there would be symbology within it that would be intelligible by intelligent extraterrestrials. And so I thought that was a really cool thing to kind of throw into this. And then it had the different aspects of like how to look at things from different perspectives and how to tie things together. It was like giving them this little Rosetta Stone kind of encoding or a way to decode the message. So I thought that was all really well done and kind of believable from that aspect, though the very large array in New Mexico doesn't actually have audio broadcasts that you can pick up from space. Apparently, that's not how it works.
You just ruined it for me.
What's that?
You just ruined the movie for me.
I know. I'm sorry.
Things, Daniel.
And I don't know if Arecibo did either, but Arecibo did recently collapse rather spectacularly. There's drone footage, and I'll put it on our show notes page. But that is pretty amazing that that occurred. However, it's a very apparently outdated technology, and there's really no plans to rebuild it because it would really just be an even bigger waste of money on top of the waste of money that all government spending is. But
Daniel,
yes,
have you been to Skagit Valley College?
I've been there. Yeah.
Have you seen the cement slab with the tile pictogram that is, I think, an exact replica of what Sagan put on the probe?
I have not. No.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if that's what it was or not. So never mind.
Okay. Well, we can find out. We can do a little you googly search and figure that out. But what the fuck was I talking about? Something about a guy meets a girl meets a guy, they fall in love, like a virgin, tip a waitress. Anyway.
Okay, first of all, I hated the court scene. I told you that already, but I wanted to go off on a mini rant about this. At one point, the movie's trying to slam home this, okay, just because you're a scientist, you have to take some things on faith. So you dumb scientist. I don't think there's any scientist in the world that says, I only believe things that I can test and replicate. And as far as the scientific method goes, even scientists, accept eyewitness testimony as evidence. Can you imagine a court case where after every time an eyewitness or a witness was giving testimony, the lawyer was like, so am I just supposed to take your word on faith? Is that what I'm supposed to do? No, we accept evidence given by people swearing that it's true. So that whole crap at the end that's just trying to ham fist cram into this, faith is a thing too, dummy. It was just hard to watch because I thought Jodie Foster character was way too smart, and there were all those people in that room that were like, they should have said something like, "Run it again," or "Witness testimony is evidence."
In the back.
Anyway.
No, actually, I enjoyed that little bit, and also Palmer Joss querying her about whether she loved her dad, because she was all about, well, I believe in science and testing like hypotheses and falsifiable things and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, did you love your dad? And she says, of course. And he says, prove it. And it reminded me of the Hoppian argument or critique of Popperism. Karl Popper, of course, is related to the scientific method, where he says all knowledge comes from testing hypotheses and falsifiable procedures. I'm butchering this. But then Hoppe says, well, what of these statements? Can you test these statements to trust the validity of them? Or did some knowledge come from linguistically working it out based on these presuppositions? So he pokes a hole in it. Now, Robert, you kind of just alluded to that, well, most people would agree that not everything can be tested in a scientific way, and that you do have knowledge that comes from other sources in the world.
Indeed. Like the alien going full Joe Biden on Jodie Foster at the end on the beach.
Sniffing her hair and everything?
Sniffing her hair and kissing her forehead, even though it's not really her dad. He could be looking like some gross tentacle monster, or like Joe Biden, and he's like creeping all over her. And she's fine with it because there's this inspirational symphonic music in the background. She's like, oh, yes, Dad. It's not your dad. It's not your dad.
Yeah, that was weird. I was confused when they were doing that, because he was saying things as if he was her dad.
Yeah.
But then he would say things like in the third person, or like we as a, different race or society from a different star system.
Yeah.
So, but she also said, well, you're just imprinting, or you extracted this from my head, and you're representing my father to me to make it not weird. So that part was a little bit
weird.
It did get weird.
It was weird. It was weird when the alien was sniffing her.
Right.
Yeah, and I thought that felt a little shoehorned in for the sake of. I don't know if that was intended to give the audience the perception to ask the question whether or not this was real, or this was some sort of projection of her, like, kind of lucid dreaming or imagination or whatever. Or because, like, she presses on the wall and it's almost like a simulation, like it kind of like flutters,
like she's still in the machine.
Right. So it's like, perhaps,
or she's miming,
and like that scene alone is all very like dreamlike in general. So yes, it's schmaltzy and kind of a cop-out, in my opinion. And that was one of the main complaints about this movie, if memory serves, is like, there's even a quote in South Park, one of the early episodes, where they're like, we wait all fucking movie for see the aliens. It's your goddamn father, or something like that. But from a storytelling standpoint, like, was it in there and portrayed the way it was to make the audience question whether or not this was a real experience or this was all in her head? You know what I mean?
It's almost like maybe it's presented in such a way to be ambiguous and maybe please many different perspectives. Because another way I've looked at it recently, and this is primarily due to watching a lot of Ancient Aliens lately with my wife, but they're always talking about like people ascending, you know, and going back into like Orion's belt or whatever, and that matter is never destroyed, it's just transferred or something like that. So we as human beings, as living beings, we have a soul or an essence that once our body dies, that essence still goes somewhere. And that's, I guess, from the Ancient Aliens idea, that's what goes back into space and goes into alternate dimensions where time is like bent and whatever. So, you know, moments on Earth or moments in space could be hundreds of years. I
don't know if that's specifically an Ancient Aliens thing, but yes, they do mention that on that show.
Well, let's just say I've been working it out in my head, but basically how I viewed this iteration, this watching of Contact, was that this could be viewed as, this is almost the heaven type scenario where you're reacquainting with your lost loved ones.
Or yes. Or if you subscribe to like heaven, the concept of heaven isn't sitting on a cloud with Jesus hanging out with you on one side and then a bearded God type character on the other side, and all your dead pets are there. And if you subscribe to perhaps the concept of heaven is the evolution of the consciousness and humans reintegrating within the galactic or cosmic collective consciousness, which will allow these feelings of peace and unity or whatever within the whole network of the cosmos. But because humans were not ready for this type of experience, we have a push forward towards that direction. However, that alien was forced to be her father. It's all very, I think maybe I dug into it a little deep there for whatever reason, but was like when you see the alien in the distance, is it just me, or was it like kind of like this mangled stick figure looking thing, and then it
was like a mirage, and it was just slowly
okay. I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense that they would
not stoned for this conversation.
It does make sense to me that if an alien species or race had that level of technology, that they would present themselves in such a way to not freak you out. That if they had an awareness to that, it would be like likening themselves to you. Like it's a mimicry is a great way of like building camaraderie with people.
Sure.
Just in general.
So your brain doesn't melt because there's like a fucking cosmic Cthulhu alien in front of you or whatever. You know.
But you're dealing with an explorer who is expecting to see an alien.
I don't even like to see a three-legged dog.
A giant machine for years at massive expense with the express intention to see a Goldern alien. So I don't think you're going to like shock and surprise anybody. It's actually like, no, I expected to see something different, you know.
But
it's weird, this idea that people think that human beings' heads are going to explode if we find out tomorrow that aliens are real and this is what they look like. We've seen enough sci-fi, fantasy fiction, all kinds of ideas and weirdo things. Star Wars is one of the most popular, Star Trek, massive franchises that have made billions of dollars and have shown us nothing but weird-looking creatures, and those are super popular. So I just don't get it.
Baby Yoda?
That humans, especially, I don't know about you guys, but I've become, I know Daniel has, I don't know about Bobby, Snobby, sorry, that become a fan of the Babylon Bee, a kind of right-leaning Christian conservative kind of website. And even they joke about the alien reveal and aliens being real and how nobody gives a shit. We're so jaded, it would just be another thing.
Yeah, that was actually in my notes as well, as like, even if they like, that's one of the themes kind of this movie is like, humans aren't ready for this. They couldn't even fathom the cosmic creation that is alien life. And to be fair, there's potentially aliens that are beyond the third dimension, and like perhaps we're not biologically equipped to perceive them visually. And the alien was like, well, she lost her father, so we might as well be her dad for a little while and make it feel good or whatever. But yeah, like to your point, Robert, like if they've basically come out in like the last couple of months, be like, oh yeah, like monoliths, Israeli guy. They do it every few years. Some whistleblower will come out and be like, oh yeah, aliens are real. We've been in contact with them forever. And like people are like, all right, well, I'm gonna bitch about whether or not Die Hard's a Christmas movie on Twitter for a while, and you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't think it has this like earth-shattering, paradigm-crumbling effect that they think it will have, especially in movies like this where they try to get that across. Now, the beach scene, my thought is this, from a filmmaking standpoint, is if you're going to actually show an alien, like it's a catch-22. Like, you either take the kind of more schmaltzy, sophisticated route and have the alien be your father, and then 20 years later dickheads like us are talking about it on a podcast, or you do like an alien, whatever that looks like according to Hollywood in that specific movie, and then instead of people bitching about that it's their father, they're going to be like, that alien looks stupid, and then dickheads like us are on podcasts 20 years later complaining about that. So you can't win one way or the other, is my point.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Absolutely. They probably went the best way.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I mean, what is it? It's some Star Trek looking, you can give them blue skin or something and whatever. I mean, nobody cares. But
did you go ahead, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to go to I thought the movie presented, all the crazies that kind of surrounded Jodie Foster when she's like going to a premiere or she's driving out to the desert to the satellite array or whatever.
And
there are all these. No, there's not that guy, but just the overall the groupies that are like, yeah, aliens, what's up? Get me on board.
The neo-Nazis,
beam me up. Yeah, even the neo-Nazis. Yeah, those are my favorite ones, of course. But I think that was pretty realistic. I thought that there would still be, even today, wasn't it who was it? Elon Musk said, hey, or NASA, that we're going to do a one-way trip to Mars. And they had like 50,000 people like put in their name and be like, yeah, get the hell off this planet. That sounds great. There's a lot of people, I think, that would be, I don't got anything else going on. I mean, I could either go to Burning Man or I could go to this or that, or we could go out and, say hi to the aliens.
What's ironic about that Elon Musk endeavor about going to Mars or whatever, whoever's heading up, is like, okay, well, we need people that are willing to go, but we need like actually very mentally stable and like psychologically sound human beings to like take part in this massive jolt into the future. But the only type of people that would attract is like lonely, crazy people that just want to like,
you can just like advise yourself out of all viable candidates.
Right. Yes, exactly. Like, you got to leave your family. Like, I don't have one. Yeah. You said Milton from Office Space.
Yeah. Now you would need the intrepid explorer type people, the hardy homesteaders type. But yeah,
Yes.
you're going to get the loners that don't want to be here anymore, that don't fit in.
Kidnap a bunch of agorists and send them to space.
Yeah. Well, they had the Pauly Shore, in that biodome. Had they could just send Pauly Shore.
That's a terrible film.
Shut your mouth.
Contact holds up better than Biodome. Encino Man, on the other hand, I'll come back for that episode.
So, hey, did I
Whatever
finish?
happened to that guy? Anyway, what? Daniel?
Pauly Shore? Pauly Shore?
No, the other guy, the Encino Man guy. The
Stephen Baldwin.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't in the Encino Man the guy that.
Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser. Thank you.
Yeah, he's very overweight now, and doesn't get a lot of work.
He was doing mummy movies a while back.
That was like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
That was back when like Contact came out.
George of the Jungle.
Yeah,
I think that might have been his last working thing.
Oh, Blast from the Past.
I heard he destroyed his body making the mummy movies. Like the stunt work in that, he fucked himself up really badly physically. I heard that. I don't know if that played into his lack of recurring roles, but.
So, Robert, do you think you thought the portrayal of all the little factions of humans, like outside the space station thing, was like a realistic?
Well, I didn't.
montage?
I mean, these days, I don't think the neo-Nazis would have been hanging out next to the hippies, and then the hippies wouldn't have been like attacking them or whatever.
Right.
But for the most part, I thought that there would be some people who would be like, yes, beam me up. I want to get out of here.
It looked like the
like
Standing
Festival
Rock
Boys,
protest, but a few neo-Nazis in the group as well.
Right, and they were there because the first image that came back was, of course,
the first broadcast, apparently, in space was Hitler.
Now, I did like that once that was deciphered or they found out what that image was. That's when James Woods' character says, "Give me the president," because he's like, "Oh shit," like
we got alien Nazis.
Or the aliens all think we're Hitler. It's not good.
Right. And I did like the point that he brought up that that they might view like people on Earth as if they're just an anthill in Africa. Like maybe we're just that insignificant to them. He's like, well, what if we are just that insignificant to them? Like, how much worry do we have about some anthill in Africa when we're, drone bombing civilians? Like,
yeah. That guy was portrayed as like the douchebag of the movie, but like I said in the pre-show content, I sympathize in a lot of ways with the skeptic here. I'm like, yo, we gotta like, let's talk about this before
maybe the whole Vegan army will come out of this wormhole.
Right.
It's possible.
The Avengers.
It's possible.
And we were just stupid enough to build it. I thought that was pretty funny too, because
infiltration.
It's like he gave the Trojan horse argument.
Yeah. It's
not
bad. I like the idea of the scientists being like, though, that I mean, if they have that level of technology, they wouldn't give a shit about us. Like, what's the point of
what would they gain? Yeah.
What would they gain? But if it isn't them, if it's just somebody who's come along and they're a shady group of people and they've hijacked this technology and they're using it to go around from world to world conquering, then okay, he's got an argument there. That'd be fun.
Like, what if that's the type of technology that was used in They Live to get those aliens to Earth so that they could extract resources from the planet?
Yes, bitch.
Right. Let's bring all these things together.
It's a movie about Jodie Foster.
In the same universe. Contact and They Live happens in the same universe.
Perhaps. I think that we're applying like a lot of fairly logical and like real world speculations about this movie, almost to the point where it's like, I'm not sure if like I mentioned earlier, it's almost like a fairy tale. It's not necessarily supposed to like represent like the real reaction to all this. It's more about Jodie Foster and her arc, more so than like the neo-Nazis and the hippies watching the fidget spinner, send Jodie Foster to see her alien father or whatever.
Yeah, no,
Or
I would
how-
definitely agree with that.
So I think that the media, like I'd mentioned, like the media is all like very like, there's nothing nuanced or complicated about the institutions in this movie. It's like very cookie cutter. And if you wanted to throw that in there, it may have been a more interesting movie, but it would deflect from what it was actually trying to do. Right.
Right.
And it does it a little bit. I like Rob Lowe as like the cartoonish, like conservative man with the Southern accent. It's like, they don't even believe in Jesus or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was interesting watching this movie. This was a big mainstream blockbuster movie in 97. And they're like Robert, you had mentioned earlier, I kind of want to go back to, is like back then, like it was refreshing to see like the conversation about faith versus science rather than just portraying anyone that is remotely spiritual or religious as like just a backwoods right-wing kook. Like everything now is so cynical and secular and like, I fucking love science, like all hail Lord Fauci kind of shit. Whereas like, if you were to try to have that conversation now, a bunch of like dipshits on the internet would just scoff at it and be like, you know, like the whole atheist movement or whatever. It's just like, dude, it's more complicated than what you're trying to say here.
Yeah, and the scientists are the original skeptics. If it wasn't for science, we wouldn't have all this cool shit, and it wouldn't have made all these advancements. People saying, but what if what you're saying isn't true? What if the Earth isn't at the center of the galaxy and the known universe and all this?
Fucking buzzkills.
And now it's all about how science is the consensus, and you have to follow the science, and you can't question the science.
Yeah, what happened to question everything?
That's
It's evolved into a religion. It is religion.
Yeah.
We live in a secular theocracy.
It's a new nightmare.
Yeah, it's weird how that cultural shift has occurred. We've talked about it. You mentioned it earlier, Robert, where when we were growing up, when this movie came out, it was more of a, you know, the Christian conservative types that were getting into your personal business and personal affairs. And now it's the other way around. Similarly, it seems as if the atheist types are now, you know, they're the religious types sticking to not religion per se, but statism and authority and the narrative as their religion, as their dogma. And I also, you mentioned that science and questioning helps bring a lot of the cool stuff that we have today, but so did, brilliant entrepreneurs like S.R. Haddon in this film. S.R. Haddon, I think he's played out to be this villain character.
The Daniel character of the movie.
But
I like to keep my interests mobile.
That's right. Yeah. And he's also, but he says lines like, I want to give back from those who I've taken so much. But that's sort of like
Trump.
Right. But they're sort of like saying, well, then he's exploited people to get his riches when he's provided goods and services that made people's lives better. I mean, he's like a Bezos type guy in this movie. You know, he's as rich as small countries, I think they mention. And he's also playing the government against other governments brilliantly, where I love how he says, when he reveals the second machine on Hokkaido, he's like, why just build one when you can build two for twice the price? That's the first rule of government spending.
Right. I wasn't sure if they were trying to portray that character as like corporate polluter, evil billionaire guy. Because again, my brain is tainted with 2020 right now and all that, very black and white perception of people like that. So I wasn't sure if they were trying to paint him as this villain type, because he's always in like dark lighting and kind of like ominous music and like, oh, I've been watching you your whole life. And you're like, you're not really sure what his angle is at first. And then it's kind of ambiguous / your people of our ilk are probably more like, yeah, go that guy. He's a good scientist from the private sector that plays governments against each other.
Yeah, he got it to work right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand how he had made his money, but evidently he thought that he had taken rather than given. So either he didn't understand his role as an entrepreneur, or he wasn't one. I didn't, what was it? How did Woods describe him at the end? As this puppet strings pulling guy with this incentive to fool everybody.
One last trick or whatever before he died.
As if he had something to gain, or I didn't really follow.
Yeah, it was about ego and legacy.
How that, how this Haddon guy was such a polarizing figure, or such an evil, hated figure. That Woods could easily blame this guy.
Well, again, Woods' agenda seems to be ambiguous as far as I could tell. However, though he's still a character that's trying to discredit this system in general, so perhaps he's just using that guy to paint that perception or that narrative about that guy for his own gain. Maybe he doesn't actually necessarily believe what he's saying, as politicians will do.
Okay, wait a minute. I just had a thought. I remember one more thing I really hated about that final courtroom scene. It's so flawed. It's so terrible. So at one point when he's talking about how Haddon has possibly orchestrated this hoax, just because you launch a satellite and you maybe have it playing a signal off of this satellite, there's no way in God's green earth that you could have a radio telescope in one location and a radio telescope in another location on the other side of the planet, all triangulating, all getting the same signal from this one precision point in the sky in Vega. It's going to be a completely different angle unless you have a satellite over every telescope on Earth, all networked, all displaying the exact same thing, and all in geosynchronous orbit, just to pretend to be Vega at all times. You're not going to be able. That's why you have multiple people confirming the same signal all over the planet, because there is you have to replicate it, science, repeatable, but you could be fooled. One person can be fooled. But the chances that everybody on Earth that has a telescope is going to be fooled by this, it would be a hoax on the level of magnitude that is inconceivable, even for a man with his resources. I'll just say it's completely retarded. It's a completely retarded proposition that Jodie Foster's character should have laughed out loud at, because she knows about radio telescopes and pointing at impossibly precise measurements. The distances in space are so huge that you move a telescope a fraction of a millimeter and you're getting a completely different signal from a completely different solar system, from a completely different galaxy. So the idea that one person, anyway, I've already said it. It's stupid.
Sorry, I'm gonna give a late hit. I'm gonna give a late hit, Robert, on the VLA. When she hears the signal, she's having to move the thing, and it's moving like super far. Like, no, if you're picking up the signal and it's like in Vega, then you need to not move the VLA like super far, right? That doesn't make any sense.
Oh yeah, no, that was stupid. That was probably something done for
visual
movie, visual effect, because you have to show motion, something actually happening.
Right. All right. Well, we're actually happening here nearly upon the end of this episode, unfortunately. So I want to get any final notes. Bobby, you might have had a comment to throw out there, so go ahead. And then if you got any final notes, we get into the summary and review.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know that this was the first time I'd ever seen this movie. It was in preparation for the show. I kind of missed this one back in the day. I was probably about 97, like 14 years old when it came out. So that said, I wasn't the target demographic at the time. In general, I actually found it engaging more than I thought it would be. I thought I was going to go in and watch it more or less as a chore for the Actual Anarchy podcast, but I did enjoy it in kind of thinking about how film was used to explore different themes in 1997 versus what we're in the attitudes we're seeing now. So I feel like if I had watched this movie 10 years ago, I would find it unbearably schmaltzy and relatively uninteresting. But watching it in 2020, it's comfortable. Because I had mentioned earlier, we live in a very cynical and we hold secularism on this undeserved platform, in my opinion. And it's all status quo now, and spirituality is something to be mocked at in this day and age. And just watching a time when Hollywood could actually explore spirituality in a very scientific film without using it as a crutch to scoff at religious right-wing backwoods people or whatever. Exploration of science versus religion, human ingenuity. It's ambiguous enough to make you think, but it also kind of holds the layman's hand through the story itself. I think 20 years ago, it would have come off as way deeper than it does today. Because you think about today, like there's kids in middle school talking about like the multiverse and simulation theory and all this crazy shit, where like even 10 years ago, people would have been like, what the fuck are you like? That's fucking nuts. What are you, some sort of cuckoo bird? And then, as I'd mentioned, from a technical and aesthetic angle, it had a lot of admirable and meticulous moments from just a strictly filmmaking thing. But the scaffolding itself, the story itself, isn't exactly anything unique. It definitely has its flaws, and I mostly agree with Robert's grievances with this movie. The themes are relatively thought-provoking, especially for a big-budget movie like this. But it's just not as challenging as people would like to make it out to be, I don't think. It's digestible, safe sci-fi you can watch with your grandma on a slow Tuesday night and have a relatively interesting conversation with your grandma about it.
Okay. Well, Bobby, I think that almost qualifies as a final summary review.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you want to throw a score of, however many radio telescopes you're going to point towards Vega.
Okay. How many? Okay. Let's do it out of 5, I guess.
5's good. Sure.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there. Those are my final thoughts and my final summary. I'm going to go 3 out of 5. Not unbearable, but probably nothing I'm going to be in a hurry to revisit anytime soon.
Okay. So your nemesis, Roger Ebert, gave it 4 out of 5.
That guy's a piece of shit. That guy's a hack. God, I hate him.
Isn't he dead?
Yes.
He is. Yeah.
You're angry with a corpse. Okay.
The
Well.
world is a better place because of it. No, he had some pretty funny takes, actually, but I generally disagree with him.
All right. Well, well
Right
done.
on.
So,
Right on.
Robert, how about your turn, and how many VLAs do you give it?
Well, I want to give it creepy vegans out of 10, if that's all right. But and I like Bobby's take on it. I think it tries to be a little bit headier, or thinks it's headier than it is. Maybe we've just moved past it in 2020, but it is fairly quaint. It's, by the time it gets to its point, that there's some things you got to take on faith. Everybody's like, yeah, duh. You don't know everything. You can't study and quantify and test everything in order to know it. You have to take somebody's word for it. You have to assume things. You can't just test and structurally, scientifically analyze every single thing in order to have knowledge of a thing. You would know so very little, you wouldn't be able to function in this world. And maybe some nerds are like that. Maybe that really appeals to people. I don't know. But the movie itself is, it's decent. It's competent. It's well acted for the most part. I did enjoy all the celebrities that, were in this. Rob Lowe's character was fun for his brief moment that he was in it. I like James Woods. I like James Woods in person. Not that I know him, but on Twitter, he's a fun guy. And in this movie, he's competent. He doesn't get as much work as he did back then. Maybe he's retired. I don't know. Or maybe just Hollywood doesn't like conservative voices, but I think we all know that. One more thing about that courtroom scene. The idea that astronomers can't tell the difference between satellites and galaxies is offensive. And I am offended for Jodie Foster and any other astronomer in the world. I'm personally offended. Okay. No more about that.
Your white knighting is noted.
Thank you. I will simp for scientists and astronomers in this essence. Okay. So one last bit. I mentioned it a little bit in the pre-bit, but at one point, the Matthew McConaughey character, his big point is he's arguing on the faith side, but he's also arguing against technology. He's written a book in the movie about how are we happier that we have all this technology. And of course, from my point of view, the answer is we don't know. We can't possibly know. It's an impossible question to ask or to answer. It's a decent question to ask. I think there's a lot of people that talk about, with all this technology, are we getting more and more divided? Are we getting brought together? Is it, with people limiting their discussions to 128 characters, there's obviously nuance that's going to be lost. And I particularly prefer verbal dialogue versus texting and tweeting and that sort of thing. I think there's a far more tendency to assign the worst motives to people when you only can interpret it in, whatever way you're taking it, as opposed to listening to their voice. It's a reason why people don't get pissed off at podcasts. They get pissed off at tweets all the time, but they listen to someone talk for 3 hours and they're like, he's reasonable.
You vetted out a little. Yeah.
Yeah. But so you can't answer the question, are people happier with technology? But what you can say is you can say that people prefer it unequivocally. People prefer technology over not having technology because people buy it all the time. People use it all the time to make their lives better. I'm using technology right now to talk to you nerds. It shortens our work days. It makes it so that we can wash our clothes way faster than we used to be able to prepare our food way faster than we used to be able to. We can store food. There's a million and one reasons why technology makes us have more leisure time, that we can spend that leisure time then to be happy for the most part. I'm not an expert on what makes people happy, but I'm not against questioning whether technology makes us more or less ideal humans, but you can't argue that people don't prefer technology. I think there's like 10 anarcho-primitives in the world that want to go back and whatever, and there's like a few thousand Amish people, but even they use some level of technology. They just don't go beyond a certain level. So it's I'm glad the movie talks about it. But from my mind, it is, it's kind of a ridiculous question to ask. Giving it to the religious guy, I mean, he's got to be a critic of the elements in the movie. So he's a counter to the Jodie Foster character, but yet they fall for each other. I get it. It's Montagues and Capulets kind of a situation going on here. A little bit of Romeo and Juliet. Can they make it work? Who knows? But
Montagues and Unabombers.
Yes. Oh, and why didn't the movie talk about that suicide bomber much? They didn't even go on about how religion leads to. Then they're just like, whatever. I guess it just happens every once in a while.
They just needed that to show that the other guy had built the other machine privately.
Yeah. But it was kind of a big thing. Like this religious extremist thought that, that he was doing a good thing by blowing this thing up. That anyway, the movie could have. Yeah. No, they're bad people. The the movie could have gone on and kind of really had a good dialogue and discussion about that. But you, like Bobby was saying earlier, it's Jodie Foster character's movie, and this other stuff is just more of a backdrop that kind of just enriches the story.
Right, and it's already long.
It is. And my final summary review is long. I'm going to give this 6.5 pervy vegans out of 10. So I'm giving it slightly better than Snobby's, but barely better. We're right on line, I think, with this movie. It's a decent popcorn sci-fi flick. Will it have the longevity down the road? I mean, we're talking about it 23 years later, but I don't know. I'm glad it was made. It's interesting that Carl Sagan made a movie. That's fun, but
he's a shill.
I like how Snobby just hates everybody. He's going to tell me the truth, the down dirt on Sagan and everybody else. Bill Nye is a shill. Absolutely. I'm with you on that.
Sagan's show was the most watched publicly funded show in history, I think.
Yeah, I watched the shit out of Cosmos when I was a kid.
No way. It has to be like Sesame Street or something like that. Or This American.
That's what the X-Ray on Amazon Prime said.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
You trust everything Jeff Bezos tells you?
It's all lies.
But her presentation to Haddon's people, the boardroom scene where she's like,
"Yeah, that's good."
Money. She's wearing his famous getup of the turtleneck.
Oh, you noticed that?
And then Steve Jobs co-opted that recently,
like a decade ago, before he died.
He's dead now.
He died.
He's a shill.
But yeah,
I like how Snobby hates everybody who's dead. He's just
everyone's a shill.
Everyone's a shill. We're shills. We're all three shills. They should make a movie called Three Shills, and we do that one. We did Three Idiots. We did Three Idiots a couple of weeks ago. It was a good one.
All right, Daniel, what's your final sum?
Well, my final summary and review. I mean, I had a better experience than I think you guys did, and after talking about it more, I think it's maybe downgraded slightly. But I had fond memories of watching this long ago, and then recently with newly Ancient Alien eyes, and I was seeing all these possibilities of where you could take these things and how you could see each of the scenes and sort of like from different perspectives. And that also plays into how Zemeckis was sort of playing it safe and Sagan was sort of playing it safe, like trying to straddle these lines and just present the questions, but then allow the viewer to sort of interpret them in different ways. And so I think that actually takes a fair amount of skill to accomplish. And I think they achieve it pretty well. I think the movie holds up really well. And I think it's good. I really enjoyed McConaughey's acting in this. Foster's pretty good though. When she's floating and she's doing the big eyes and like, no words. That was a little bit over the top, but for the most part, I think it was pretty good. I think that it holds up. It's a good movie, and I do recommend it. I'm glad that we watched it. I'm glad we discussed it. I think it brought up some pretty interesting things to go over with you guys, and I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 VLA arrays pointed towards Vega. And
sounds like a shill score to me.
It's a pretty shill score. Super shill. So why don't we Netflix and shill next week, Robert? Well, actually, we're going to be HBO Max and shilling as they do the simultaneous release in theaters and on HBO Max of Wonder Woman 1984. So get your golden lasso, get your golden cufflinks, get your roller derby rollerblades, and your invisible jet as we do Wonder Woman with 1984, the new one, with Jose Galison of No Way Jose, also featured on the Liberty Movement as we are on The Last Nighters. We're also on the Liberty Movement, so we'll have links to that on the show notes page at lastnighters.com/156. You'll also find Snobby Bobby's previous appearances, and also prominently featured is a link to our Patreon where you can send us some money, and we will send you some bonus content, pre-show, post-show content, all of those things. We call the post-show Kathleen Turner Overdrive. I think it's a fun name. Comes from High Fidelity, of course, Jack Black's band name before they were called Sonic Death Monkey, which maybe that's what we call the pre-show. I don't know. Sonic Death Monkey. It's pretty good. But that's what we're going to be doing next week, Wonder Woman 1984. Snobby Bobby, you got any last plugs you want to throw out before we get into that Kathleen Turner Overdrive? I hope you can stick around a bit longer for that.
Yeah, real quick. Not for Everyone podcast is my podcast. I also guest spot a lot, relatively a lot on Buck Johnson's podcast, Death to Tyrants. I'm on all his Patreon episodes, at least, and a few of his regular episodes. Really good, Misesian type, Austro ANCAP type stuff. Great guests, all that stuff. So check him out. And then fearforever.com I contribute at, which is a horror movie website. I haven't written for them in a while, but I'll plug them anyway. And of course, Liberty Nelson on Twitter.
On the old Twitters.
With some hot takes.
All the hot takes. And I do follow you on there, and I get emails. And are you also posting as Lambcap?
Yeah, that's my current pseudonym right now, but it's the actual handle is at Liberty Nelson.
Okay, so people will see Lambcap listed on there if they look nowish.
Should, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where that even came from. It just sounded fun.
I like it.
It's a little lamb, yellow and black lamb.
I like it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is this is pretty much our New Year's episode. Not that we related this to New Year's in any way whatsoever, but Robert, do you have a New Year's message and other ways that they can support us over here?
Yeah, you can live your damn life. You can ignore what your freaking authoritarian governor is telling you to do. And you can, stay safe, stay healthy as you see fit. Use your own judgment. And don't let the freaking Karens of the world force you to, shame you, I guess you could say, into going along necessarily. I mean, if you need to go along with a certain extent because you hate being hassled, I can understand that to a certain extent, but you're just prolonging this nonsense by giving it any kind of legitimacy. Not that you're at fault, whichever way you choose, but the more we put up with this crap, the longer it'll go on. The idea that it's going to be done when the vaccine comes out, I think is a pipe dream. This is a power grab, and it will continue as long as people put up with it. That has always been the case with tyrants. It always will be. So there will always be an excuse. People will always be getting sick. So that's going to be a thing since the dawn of time. So as long as they want this to continue, it will continue as long as people put up with it. So live your life. If you want to, fight, stick it to the man any way you can see fit and do fit. And then that will make me happy and it will improve my life. And I will thank you for it.
And he'll do the show even better after you stick it to the man and don't let the Karens get you down.
That's right. That's right, Daniel.
All right. This is a very hopeful message for going into 2021.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. I hope that odometer on the year doesn't go get stuck on 2020. Apparently, I've seen a lot of memes about that. Yeah, like December 32nd, 2020, shit like that. Anyway, this has been our show, everyone. We'll check you out next week with Wonder Woman 1984 with Jose Galison. And with that, I will say good night from last night, everyone. Peace out. Happy New Year.